Hi, I'm Finn, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Homer, the Iliad, a bit about the summer, and also about self-mastery and challenging yourself, that sort of stuff. Recently, particularly, I've been trying to um, challenge myself in a number of ways. One is just continuing with the YouTube channel itself. This channel, there's no guarantees, and I have no idea if it will ever get to a point where it's profitable. Um, And that's not even the main concern, really. It's just I want to try and educate other people or inspire other people, something like that. And also to keep going and to keep trying to do a good job with the content and to, like, sort of pull myself up and make better content, which is more difficult than it might sound because I thought this was going to be easy when I first started, and it's actually very difficult. That being said, I think that's a good tie-in because I've been doing other stuff as well, like just trying to do, say, 100 pull-ups. I ended up doing 105 pull-ups in a day, which is more than I thought I could do. I never really thought about it, but just doing a number of things to the extent to where I'm legitimately challenged. I'm trying to do 5 mile runs and trying to beat my time, which is difficult. Um, So the point is, well, the point is that in Homer there are different characters, right? Obviously, um, spoilers by the way. It's over 2,000 years old, but the Iliad is a great book. It's an epic poem. I suggest you read it if you haven't, but I'll be spoiling some parts of it. But it's still a great book and a work of literature nonetheless. That being said, Um, so there's this character called Achilles, which is one of the most famous characters in all of Western literature. And this character is often said to be extremely courageous. That being said, it's kind of a misnomer because if you read the epic poem, you start to realize that this character is not really that courageous. This character is foretold a number of prophecies that date back sort of before um, the poem itself. Context here, there's a number of prophecies as there are in the ancient Greek world, and a lot of them prophesy Achilles to essentially be the greatest warrior that will ever live, the greatest mortal warrior that will ever live. And so he's trained sort of from birth to fulfill this prophecy. And it's pretty concrete that he's the character, he's this person, because his mother is pretty well implicated in this, and then it's her son. She only has one son at this point, so it's pretty clear. Um, and that there's the details are that essentially um, the father will be surpassed by the son. So whoever fathers her kid is going to be less famous than her son, which is Achilles. I feel like I'm meandering at this point, but point is that Achilles knows he's a great warrior. He's taught by Chiron, who's like a half centaur, trainer guy. So if you want to go to this guy, he trains you up and makes you into a great warrior, that sort of thing. Um, the point is that Homer makes this guy out to be extremely proud. This guy's he's he's a warrior without equal. He's peerless. He's swift-footed. That's one of the epithets that he's given. He's extremely fast. He's extremely cunning, in the sense that not even cunning. That's a bad adjective for this character, but he's he kills everybody on the battlefield. That's not really courage. If you go out and you know that you're not going to be beaten, you know that very few people could even have a shot at damaging you, let alone killing you. Um, and very few people. I mean, I don't even think he knows of anyone that could hurt him. And he actually ends up being killed by a god. So this is sort of reinforced. His skill is without equal except in immortals. He's not immortal. So the only class of being that can kill him is those that are completely above him. And this fosters a sort of um, you could say excessive pride or hubris. He starts to think that he's not necessarily God. I don't think he believes that, but he does believe that he's better than everybody else, and he definitely acts that way. He's pretty selfish throughout the poem. The point here is that this is not courage. It does take courage because he does, through the prophecy, he knows that he's going to die. So when he goes out and fights, he knows he's going to die eventually, but he knows that the way he fights, he's going to be the most glorious hero that's ever lived. And I'm talking about him right now, so maybe it's true in a sense. And Homer sort of reinforces this. That being said, he's not courageous on par with other people. Now, when I say people, I mean these other characters, and who I'm talking about specifically is Hector. So Hector is sort of the foil to Achilles, but in this sense, I'm not going to go into what foil means, but he's just like the opposite of Achilles in a lot of ways. He's on the opposite side, so he's a Trojan, not a Greek. But the point that I want to make is that Achilles, a lot of times in the poem, is just not a good leader. He doesn't lead with a lot of integrity. And this sort of ties back to what I'm trying to do this summer, and maybe to whoever's watching, you could do this as well, is sort of test your own limits. This is something that Hector does. This is something that Achilles doesn't do in the poem very much. There's a point where he tests himself morally by eventually letting Hector's body go back with Priam. This is one of the ending parts of the poem. It's very good. Again, I encourage people to read the Iliad or listen to it in audio form or something like that, because it was actually intended not to be read at a certain point. So the epic poems were shared orally, so this is like an oral tradition. So if you can listen to it in audiobook form, that could be a good way to listen to it as well. I think these are just really interesting parts, but barring the moral part, Achilles doesn't grow much throughout the poem. He's sort of a flat character. He's very proud, he's very angry, and he's vengeful as well. Hector, not so much. He's more of a full character. And this is because Hector, at many parts, plays a role of like a family person, a leader. There's a whole part of a chapter, you might say. There's no chapter divisions in the original poem, but like in the English version, if you pick up Fagles or Fitzgerald, you're going to see there's like a whole section that Homer devotes to where like Hector's, I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but Hector's with his family. This isn't it though, because my point is that every time he goes into battle, Hector's being challenged. He's at the front. He's at the front of the battle lines, and he's not necessarily the best warrior. He actually is pretty sure that he's not. You don't see a lot of insight into that, and people start to give him awards and acclaim, and he does accept glory. He's not perfect. He's a human being, but he holds himself with integrity, and he acts with honor. And he is actually challenged by Achilles at one point, and he goes out and he trucks it out there and fights with Achilles. Now, he actually asked for mercy and honor because he killed Patroclus, who's Achilles' like best friend. And essentially, Achilles is like, I'm gonna kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And he pretty much says, in one translation, like the lion is not going to make any sort of pact with the sheep. So he's the predator, and he's not going to give any sort of mercy to Hector, because and Hector knows he's going to die. That's the thing, is like Hector knows he's not the best and is still going to fight the very best he can. That's self-mastery. He's mastered fear. He has real courage because he has a lot more to lose. He has more of a family. His country's being attacked brutally and is being sieged for over 10 years. Or about 10 years. It depends on who you ask, because the historical is different than the literary. I don't want to get too bogged down in this. My point is that, like, mainly Hector is a better human than Achilles is. Achilles would be a great god because he's really vengeful. He's really hateful. He's not nice to humans. Hector treats people like people. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to do, is just realize that I'm actually not probably as good as I am at many different things. And I don't know, that my YouTube projects are interesting and probably worth something, but I may never get to a point where I'm like, this is great, this is excellent, and I feel like that's fine. But this video project, in a sense, is a carry through so that I can keep doing projects every week. And there'll probably be a point where I have to take a break just so I can regroup and keep doing this because I think this is important. And I think hopefully, if you are watching this, it is a testament to, like, maybe I can talk about sort of classical myth or something like that in a new and interesting way, or maybe not completely new, but add something new to it. Because I think, in a sense, it takes courage to try and master the self. Because realistically, it's easy to try and live like Achilles and just say, it's for my own glory, my own vanity, everything I do is just for myself. But hopefully, if you can push yourself beyond what you're comfortable with, and everyone's different, but for me, it's uncomfortable to try and do things like this where I'm trying to help other people, I'm trying to teach something, but I'm also trying to relate more about myself to the channel. So maybe through context, and trying harder and relating more authentically can help other people learn, or maybe even just read the Iliad. If maybe this all this amounts to, I think that's fine. Maybe that's my version of being Hector, and I feel like that's okay. But it's not okay to be an Achilles, and it's not okay to give up, and it's also not okay to just have the minimal amount of courage. Um, Doing the best you can is good in its own right, and I think that's what Hector proves in a lot of senses, that even if you have a lot at stake, if you have a lot to lose, it doesn't mean you should give up. And as a matter of fact, you should keep going. And like I mentioned earlier, Achilles actually ends up murdering Hector. But it doesn't really deter Hector. Hector is still trying the best he can to beat Achilles in that moment. He's still trying the best he can to be a good leader and to provide a good example. Because if he gives up and just sort of says, "Go ahead, Achilles, murder me in front of my family," um, it's such a bad precedent. He's hoping that maybe people can watch him fighting until the bitter end and doing his very best to fight against his enemy, that his own troops will follow suit. He's a good leader. He does what he believes in the hope that other people will follow. And I think that's a pretty good example to set and a pretty good example to follow. And I may never actually do anything that important, but I think it's important to maybe impart that knowledge, at least through Homer. People used to believe that Homer had every single thing to teach in there. So, sort of like, if you wanted to be a general, go read Homer. If you wanted to be a playwright, go read Homer. If you want to learn about gardening, you can go read Homer. More like Hesiod. But the point is, there's a lot of subject matter in Homer. It's like the Bible for Greeks, kind of, before the Bible. It's very interesting. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I think something that's important to mention is that mediocrity and knowing your limitations, being human in a sense, knowing that you're not perfect, that you're not Achilles, is one way certainly to become better at something. Maybe not great at something, but to become better, because I think in a lot of sense the journey in becoming better is much more important than like an Achilles type, because an Achilles type never really develops himself fully. And if Achilles was afraid of anything, I don't know what. I'm not really sure. And there are people who are just fantastic at things, and that's awesome. And hopefully those sorts of people are generous with their time and that sort of thing. Achilles certainly wasn't, and he allowed a lot of people to be murdered in a prolonged war, and for the Trojans to almost win to prove a point. And that sort of pride and that sort of hubris, even in 5th century classical Athens, was pretty thoroughly debunked and didn't make any sense to those people. And Homer probably didn't even believe it. I mean, Homer, a lot of people don't even believe he exists. So it depends on who you ask, and you have to make your own opinion and formulate your own argument. I think that's what's great about reading texts like the Iliad, realistically, is that it forces you to think about the modern world, or whatever the modern world is, whatever time period it is you read it in, and compare it to the past, or the way that the author Homer wanted someone to think about the past, which is it's a challenging text, and it's very interesting for that reason. So my challenge to you, if you're immortal, and maybe if you are an immortal or divine being, thank you for watching, first of all. But I'm assuming that those of you who are watching are human and that you have similar problems to, say, Hector or me or some other arbitrary random human. My challenge is that you don't choose to dwell in selfish concern, and that you choose to branch out and challenge yourself, and maybe even challenge others to do maybe what's uncomfortable, what was correct, and to hopefully work for other things besides your own arrogance and glory, that sort of thing. And maybe that's the road to self-mastery and improvement. I hope, maybe I've made a good case, maybe I haven't, but I hope maybe I'm getting to something, and if I haven't fully explained this, that you can maybe leave a comment or something like that, and I can better explain it. Or make a companion video or something like that. Or maybe even make a full in-depth character study of Hector and Achilles, and that's the thing. In the Iliad, there's so many characters, man. So many characters, and there's actually a lot of really interesting parts. Like say Diomedes. This is a character who's not mentioned much. Very interesting character. Like Odysseus gets a lot of, you'd say, screen time if it was a movie, and that's really cool. But Odysseus has an entire epic after him, so I feel, and also he's kind of a sketchy character at times. Goes in and murders people in the middle of the night, that sort of thing. And again, like one of the most famous characters, Achilles, is like, nah. I mean, if that guy was around me, I don't know if I'd want to be around him. He's like kind of a really selfish person, not very nice. And that's sort of the thing that's cool about Homer, is that you get to see all these different sides of human nature. Each of these characters is a sort of development on the flip side of humanity. And so you don't know what you're getting into. You have to read into it and make arguments and sort of think about it. And that's what makes it great. And I don't want to keep going because I feel like if I beat a dead horse too much, I could really lose people. But at any rate, I hope your summer's good, and that you do challenge yourself even if it's not summer when you're watching this. And I guess too, it would help the channel if you could share this, especially with somebody if you think maybe they could benefit from reading Homer or thinking about some Homeric characters and values, that sort of thing. And I appreciate you watching, and appreciate you staying with the channel and being involved with some of this content, because I hope it will get better, and I am trying. And I do appreciate you watching this far. Thank you so much, and yeah, have a great summer and stay fantastic. Thanks so much.